Welcome everybody to NorCal edition of the Germany Oktoberfest beer tasting. Prost! Sorry for that, I don't know. Quick note here, I am recording this a week early due to scheduling stuff and travel and all that kind of thing. So I am not actually tasting a live audience, which is a bummer. I like to see the people's smiling, shining faces, but also that does potentially create, kind of timing issue or what have you. I have timed this out pretty well as far as spacing goes, but without seeing folks, nose, sip, spit, drinking, tasting the beers. My timing, I admit, might be a little off for getting through the beers and moving on to the next one. So I apologize if I end up rushing through some of them. I guess just pause the video if I'm going too fast. I talk too much, so that probably won't be a common issue, I hope. Just really excited to taste some Oktoberfest beers and wish I was having them with everyone, because Oktoberfest really is a super fun communal thing. That's part of the whole point. Folk festivals have been a part of German culture and other countries across Europe since agriculture has been a thing, and Oktoberfest is really just kind of one of the best examples of that very, very old, very long tradition. It's a festival for the people, it's for the masses. You're supposed to be having food, talking with each other, meeting with friends, family, old acquaintances, new folks, strangers that are just friends that you haven't met yet. That's part and parcel to the celebration. So that is another reason why I'm sad that I am here by myself at the moment. However, I'm no stranger to drinking alone, so we can get this started. What is Oktoberfest? Well, I kind of already got that started a little bit. It is a folk festival. There were many that came before it. There have since been others after it. It got its impetus, its starting when Crown Prince Ludwig of Bavaria ended up getting betrothed and married to Princess Teresa. They moved to Munich. Prince Ludwig's father decided, let's make this a real frickin' party, all right? So they basically said party mode for 2 weeks straight. This started in 1810, was when they actually got married. So it was that fall, somewhere late September, early October. And they're out at Munich, outside what were the city gates. There was just a vast field, still there today, and it's named after Princess Teresa. And they just turned it into a place full of food vendors and vendors of other, crafts and goods, celebrating the harvest. So all these amazing foods coming in from all over the place, really being cooked to their prime, feast for literal kings. There was all sorts of game stalls. Horse racing became a very big part of it. There was a really epic long horse race at the very first Oktoberfest, and then it became a tradition and kind of changed forms throughout the years. So, it is a wedding celebration that was so kick-ass that they decided to keep it going forever. There are really only a couple interruptions in its 200-year history, COVID being a big part of that. most recently, and then there was like a terrorist bombing incident at one of them that messed things up. But I think other than maybe just those 3 years, this has been a thing that has been going on since 1810, and I think the world's a better place for it. We can start talking about the beers. I have quite a lineup here. We're focusing on Germany and German style beers. What we're gonna do first is 5 different Oktoberfest beers, or fest style beers. It's technically only breweries that are in the city of Munich and adhere to the Reinheitsgebot, which is the German beer purity law of 1516, can actually serve at the official Oktoberfest celebration in Munich and outside the city gates. So I think it's actually about 8 different breweries are currently in that categorized, allowed to do that and be official Oktoberfest beers. But certainly there are lots of other breweries around Germany and around the world, even here in the United States, that do fest style beers in celebration. So what is fest style? There's really 2 different fest styles, if you want to get technical. One is traditionally just called fest beer. It tends to be a really light lager, very crisp, clean, super easy to drink, though it was brewed at the time with a higher than normal ABV, which was kind of a thing of moving into the fall because you want heartier brews when the weather's changing, but also, again, it's a celebration, it's a party, you know, we can drink stronger beers and have a great time. So that was part of it. The second style, which there's a little bit of a historical debate about when it was started, when it was created, why it was created. The most common story is that it was basically brewed for Oktoberfest. It got its start not at the original one, but a few years down the line, they started making beers that were also lagers, also light in body and in weight, but using darker, roastier malts, and again, having that higher ABV. So I really love, one of the things I love about Oktoberfest and Oktoberfest beers is it is this great unofficial celebration of the changing of the season. So we're not just celebrating some prince and princess getting married in Germany 200 or so years ago. You know, we just had 100-degree days in California here. You want a really light, crispy lager, even though it's September, right? It's fall in other parts of the planet, but when the weather's that hot, you want something light. But at this same festival, at this same time, all these beers are being brewed that are in the Marzen style as well. So you have these darker, richer flavored, heartier beers that are kind of, you know, getting you ready for winter. So you have the end of summer, you have the beginning of fall, all represented in this style of beer. Another thing of note that is worthwhile before we really jump into the tasting specifically is shipping issues are still a thing. I don't have to tell any of you that, but it has not just affected wines coming from France or Australia. They've affected beers coming from Germany. Everywhere around here has gotten their Oktoberfest beers late. I was actually talking with the folks at Gourmet House a little while ago. They were actually worried that they wouldn't be able to have their Oktoberfest celebration, which was just this past weekend, because they hadn't gotten enough of their inventory, and then it showed up right in time. We have a few German and we have a few domestic currently in stock. There's a little bit different inventory in Northern and Southern California, but I think that's a really nice mix for our customers. So I'm focusing on what we have available up here. I didn't bring anything from down south, though I have tasted some of them, and Gio picked out some fantastic beers. We did good work. we're amazing beer buyers. But so we have somewhat limited scope of selection at the moment. Hopefully more will be coming in. Who knows? I kind of went light on buying them for that reason, because I didn't want a bunch of stuff to show up after Oktoberfest. So when is Oktoberfest? Oktoberfest this year is officially from September 17th through October 3rd. And with that, let us begin our October Beer Fest tasting. First up, we're going to do Hofbrauhaus, Hofbraumonchen, their Oktoberfest. The guy at Gourmet House thought, the manager there actually said it was the most boring one, but it's what we have. It's really, really light, refreshing. Good beer flavored beer, as Gary would say. Hofbraumonchen was originally opened in 1589. The brewery is currently owned by the Bavarian state government, which is the case of a lot of Bavarian breweries, but state governments control a lot of German breweries. There's not a whole lot of independent, or what we would call like craft breweries nowadays. But that does not mean that they're producing swill. It is mass produced, but it's very well done, still according to traditional standards, purity laws, ancient recipes, all that kind of thing. Hof actually translates to court, and in this case signifies that this was the official royal beer of Bavarian, the royalty of Bavaria for I think 300 years, something like that. It was a long time. So again, they have provenance, they have a reputation, and I do think that translates in their beers. Their original Helles is something we always have on stock. People love it. Staff loves it. It's a great closer. It's light, it's crisp, it's refreshing. It'll get you through the summer. It'll help you with that 100-degree heat that we were talking about. I think it's just fantastic. Next up, we are going on to the first of several beers from Weihenstephaner, another staff favorite brewery in general. This is their fest beer, the lager version. They also do have a Marzen that they make. It's a very, very light Marzen, though, I will say. Gary Westby ended up buying almost all of what I brought in last week. He very graciously opened a lot of it for the staff, and so we enjoyed that, but I don't have very much of their Marzen anymore. And again, hopefully I can get some more in this upcoming week, but that's not a guarantee. Weihenstephaner is super cool because they are potentially the oldest continuously operating brewery in the world. There's a little bit of murkiness or debate about when their actual founding was. If you look on the can and you check out their website and any available marketing from them, they are very adamant about the 1040 date, which is quite impressive. That is basically 1,000 years as a brewery, still going, never stopped making stuff, at least, for longer than a few weeks or something. The debate around that is apparently there's like some document that was the decree from the Duke of Bavaria saying, 1040, you are officially one of our best breweries and you're amazing. There are certain scholars who have argued that document, that I believe is currently in the possession of the brewery, is a forgery and didn't actually show up until a couple hundred years later than the 1040 date. However, The brewery used to be an abbey. It was a monastery, and the monastery was definitely founded in 1725, or 725, not 1725, 725, and there are reports in historical documents, mostly internal documents from the abbey and the monks who took care of it, describing a hop garden. So they had a garden for hops at least as early as 768. If you got a garden full of hops and you're German monks, you're probably brewing beer. Hops are a great plant. They look pretty, they smell nice on their own. So they could be just have been growing them for their own purposes, just for the sake of growing them. But I'm gonna guess there was some beer being made. So their history potentially precedes this 1040 date that they're claiming. So anyway, potential dates for the start of this brewery are 1040 or 768 or 1146. But like I said, it's kind of a moot point really when you are talking about a history that deep. Like they have been making beer either as monks or just secular brewers for essentially 1,000 years, and they have it dialed in. They are really good, and I think this Fest beer totally shows it. I mean, it's focused, it's clean, it's simple, there's nothing flashy about it, but it just tastes really great, and I can crush those Fest beers all day. Moving on to an unofficial Fest beer, but still German. I should probably be saying the prices of these. I don't know. I think that matters a little less for beers. Nobody cares how much beer costs. Just like how nobody cares how much beer sells. Anyway, the Erdinger Oktoberfest is $2.49. All of these are nice, inexpensive beers. You're not going to find anything flashy or expensive. Your craft triple IPAs and double fruited sours and pastry stouts. Those are the ones that are gonna set you back, $6, $7, $8, $10, $15 or whatever. Or your Belgian sours, really traditional lambics and stuff that can go for $10, $20, $30. All of these guys are kind of hanging out under $5. It's really, really nice. They're super affordable. Again, this is for a Volksfest. This is the beer of the people. It's not supposed to be pretentious. It's not supposed to be expensive. Erdinger. We're dealing with a very different animal here, my friend. Erdinger was founded in 1886, though it didn't get this current name until 1949. It is the world's largest wheat beer brewery. They produce 1.8 million hectoliters per annum. They're cranking out the stuff more than anyone else, which again, this is one of those cases where I think mass production it's not a bad word or a bad phrase. They're still doing really great work. We carry a few different things from them throughout the year. Was really happy to get their Oktoberfest style beer. It is a Weissenbrau, so it is a wheat beer. So this would be a beer that cannot be served at the Munich Oktoberfest for two reasons. One, it's from Erding, so it's not from Munich. It's a different place in Germany. But then it also uses wheat as part of the brewing process, and that violates the terms of the Reinheitsgebot. So can't actually be at the Munich Oktoberfest. It can be at your Oktoberfest though, because it's fantastic. And I think, as you're nosing it, as you're tasting it, it's clearly different than the first two. It has a slightly cloudier, unfiltered situation going on. It looks like for the color, for the clarity. It has more of those tropical fruit and spicy notes that you get from other Weiss beers, other wheat beers. But see, that's something that really makes it start feeling more like a fall beer for me. It's not a super light wheat beer, though it's not super heavy either, but it just has some of those cardamom, clove coming through. Just starts getting me in the mood for fall, for Christmas a little bit, even though that's way off and I don't want that to come quickly, but beautiful stuff there. Let's move right along. I got a domestic fest beer here from Societe. They are down in San Diego. Founded just 10 years ago, 2012. Their slogan is Beer Folk Unite, which is absolutely in line with the philosophy of Oktoberfest. I feel that community, that, even just the use of the word folk, they are unpretentious and still really cool. We have carried stuff from them throughout their lineup of both their core line and their one-offs and seasonal stuff since I've been here. Really, really, really like what they put out. This is a pretty straight up fest beer, maybe getting a little darker, but not quite to Marzen territory. But yeah, they're just really, really nice, clean beers. I think they do fest beer style really well, which is fairly commendable, I would say, because it's hard to just make a good lager that anyone cares about. I think especially in America, the US is inundated with the big brands that we, all of our parents and grandparents drank. And so we're kind of just used to really mediocre lagers. Germany definitely has a step up on that. And I think domestic craft brewers actually taking the time to go that route and do it right and do it well. Making lagers is a much longer fermentation process. It takes more energy because you have to do it at a cold temperature, but it just takes longer to actually develop any worthwhile flavors. And so when I see a US brewery doing that style and doing it well, I take notice, and Society is one of the breweries doing that. That is $2.99. Again, just lovely little cheapy beer. Last in the Oktoberfest part of the lineup is another domestic. This is Rocktoberfest from Almanac. This is popping in at $3.69, so it's one of the more expensive Oktoberfest beers, but there's your Marzen right there. So still a lager, still cold fermented, bottom fermented with the yeast, but using some darker, roastier malts to get some richer flavor. Oh. I've definitely had Almanac beers in several other of my staff tastings in the past, so you know that I like them. I won't go on and on about them, but I will, just kind of hit the core points. Alameda Brewery, really cool folks. They take their name from the Farmer's Almanac. They focus on sustainable and seasonal ingredients, especially when they're doing their different sour series in the Sour Nova lineup. They're using the fruit that is at peak season and properly barrel conditioning it. Again, they're another brewery that they do the process the slow, lengthy, not cost effective, but deeply enriching way. They're just really cool, really awesome label on that too, by the way. I hope you saw that, but like really creepy nightmare figure there. Jack-o'-lantern head eating some sausages and giant pretzels. Yeah, they just do good ingredients. If you're ever around that area, they do yoga classes every weekend, and they give you a free beer after yoga if you do that. So, you know, they're good kind of hipster folk. Yeah, so this is, it's brewed with Wyman Bark Pilsner, Munich, and Cara Munich malts. So again, it's gonna have that light body, but really nice toasty flavor from those roasted malt. Varietals. Next up, we're moving away from Oktoberfest, but we're not moving away from Germany. A K&L classic, the Jever Pilsner. Everybody loves a good Pilsner. Gonna have, again, that light body, but a little more hop kick. Oh, it smells so good. This is a hometown brew. It's named after the city in which the brewery is located, founded in 1848. It's changed hands many times over the last couple hundred years, or 150 years, but critics and fanboys alike throughout that time have said that like the beer doesn't change no matter who is in ownership. Consistency is a mainstay at the brewery, so I think that's a really cool thing. And also just a strange little bit of trivia for you. It's brewed in the region of Frisia, and that dialect of German is the language most closely related to English. So that's weird and cool. In case you want to nerd out. Just noticing there's not a proper spit bucket back here, which is kind of my bad. All right, we are going on to Früh Kolsch. Another Staffy favorite, at least in the Redwood City store. Founded in 1904 in Cologne, which is where Kolsch is from. Oh, that's so light. I actually probably should have done that one first before the Jever, but we already did the Rocktoberfest, which had dark notes to it. So, I mean, Woodhouse he alternates white and red all the time, so you guys can handle that transition. Founded by Peter Joseph Früh, Kolsch beer has one of the most strictly defined and geographically focused legal parameters of any beer in the world. It has to be a certain area, like there's like a 5-mile radius, or it's like 15 kilometers or something around Cologne. If you're outside of that, you can't use it, and Cologne's real tiny. So it became geographically protected status in 1997. It's a part of EU law, so no one in the EU can call beer Kolsch unless it's from Kolsch, made to those standards. Whereas we do have a little bit more leniency here in the US. You will see a lot of beers from domestic breweries called Kolsch because we're not in the EU, and America tends to do whatever it wants, but whatever. I love the really light fruitiness that kind of just goes along with the light grain and cereal notes. There's just a subtle sweetness, a little bit of honey. That is a refreshing beer. Also of note, this is a hybrid style beer, so it is fermented with top fermenting yeast like an ale, but then it's cold conditioned like a lager. So that makes the brewing process a little simpler and a little easier for the makers, but you're still resulting in a beer that is very lager-like, even though it can't technically be called a lager. That's another Gary beer right there for sure. All right, we're going back to Hofbrau for their original. This is the one I was talking about. That is, again, a very regular closer fan at K&L. 269, based in Munich. Very pale lager. Hell means pale, and it also means bright. So, you know, pale and bright, just like me, and from hell. Stylistically, sweet, very low bitterness, but texturally, there's a bit more body going on with this one. So it's almost kind of like the flip, the doppelganger of the Marzen style, where with Marzen you want that really clean, light body, but darker, toastier flavors. With a Helles, you want those light flavors, but more body, more texture. So you get a little more full mouthfeel, a little more round. Yes, big fan of that as well. Next up, it's back to our friends Weihenstephaner. This is their Heller beer, which is called 1516. So that name of 1516, oh, poured way too much for myself. Oh no. That is, again, the date that the Reinheitsgebot, the German beer purity law, passed and was formally signed into Bavarian law, and then later elsewhere in Germany. So it does conform to the terms of the Reinheitsgebot. Interestingly enough, though, they're doing a low filtration technique. So you will notice it's a bit darker, bit hazier. And this was brewed as a celebration of the Reinheitsgebot because Weihenstephaner kind of thinks that that law is part of what helped propel them into first national and then international status. Like, everybody having to play on this playing field and just go for what is the pure essence of beer without adding all sorts of weird funky things. Like, you really have to, you know, it's simplicity in poetry or painting. Like, the less you're working with, the more the ingredients really have to shine through, and your ability to craft them is really showcased. You know, if you're only dealing with literally 3-4 ingredients, then you have no room to make mistakes. You either have to excel or your brewery doesn't last very long. But so this is another one. I think it's a really great transition after the Hofbrau, because even more body, even more texture because of that lack of filtration. A little more roasty maltiness, but not too much. really nice sweetness on that beer. Just a touch, just subtle, but really, really cool. Next up, we're going to do the Weihenstephaner Hefeweiss. So this is, again, going to be another wheat beer. And if you recall that Erdinger, really getting some nice tropical fruit notes. A lot of kind of like dried orange peel. Again, subtle kind of baking spices coming through. A little melon kind of thing. That is so refreshing at the end of a long day. This is using at least 50% wheat in the mash bill. They don't give away their secrets too easily at this brewery, so they're not saying exactly, but the majority of the grain being used in this beer is wheat, so the profile is definitely pronounced with that. They're also using a lot of pale malt, and they're air drying it as opposed to kiln drying it. So that is another thing that like kind of keeps away some of the darker, the roastier flavors. It's a very gentle process, and it's a very time-consuming process. But again, once you taste it, you understand why. Like, it is just fantastic. Most modern wheat beers, stuff that we see domestically, are not as wheat forward as a lot of the traditional European stuff, especially if we look to the folks here at Weihenstephaner or Erdinger. They're using a very high proportion of wheat. Again, not cost effective, but it translates to flavor, and that is awesome. Really complex notes of baking spices and tropical fruits. Really like that. All right. Moving along. Now we're starting to get into the darker stuff, which I'm very happy about, because that kind of tends to actually be how I lean, both personality and drinking taste. Ayinger, this is their Altbärisch Dunkel. Oh yes, yes my friends, malty roasty darkness, it's starting to become evil. It smells like really like great, like thick, crusty bread that's on the verge of over baking. Like, it's not quite burnt yet, but you're like, I need to get that out of the oven right now, and it'll be perfect. And if I let it go a moment longer, it will be inedible. Oh, so tasty. I'm really happy to have Ayinger back in the store. We've had them kind of on and off since well before my time, but they kind of just came back into, I think, Southern's portfolio. And so I started buying them. Used to love this beer back in the day, like starting in my college times, but then also later when I worked at Beltramos. Come on in, Miles, it's okay. The brewery is founded in 1877. It's from Bavaria, just outside of Munich. Very traditional brewery. They do some lighter styles, some darker styles. This is possibly my favorite thing that they do because of the darkness. it just has all those roasty flavors that I find like they can be so sweet and savory at the same time. And I think, you know, these light lagers, the Fest beer stuff, your Pilsners, your Kolsch, great for cutting through like fattier foods a lot of the times. But if you're eating fattier foods, especially German stuff, you're probably also having some pickle, some sauerkraut, something to help cut through the fattiness and any like rich protein of aspect of the food. I just think that these Dunkels, like these darker beers, really complement roasted meats so well. It definitely puts me in the mood for fall, makes me a happy boy. All right. Sorry, we're going back to them. I just can't quit them. The Vitus from Weihenstephaner. This is a very strange kind of beer. I guess not very strange, but it's a wheated bock. A bock beer is a strong beer. Originally, so this guy's a Dunkel, which is supposed to be a richer, stronger, darker beer. Like that's the point of it. It's still a lager, but getting more roasty, getting heavier. A bock is supposed to be a step up from a Dunkel. Dunkel actually translates to dark. Bock is supposed to be more heavy, more rich. Actually gets its name from the original place it was supposedly brewed, which is the city of Einbeck in the 14th century. And then it got really popular in Bavaria, and people in that part of Germany kind of have a funny accent. It's actually very cute. If you've never heard it, I hope you do. Google it, or better yet, go travel there. I love Bavarian folks' accent. It's a little more homey, soft-spoken, rounded sounds. It's not kind of that harsh German stereotype. It's a little more country. And so they were pronouncing Einbeck, the city, and the style, like they were calling it the style of beer that named after the city, but they kept calling it Einbock instead of Einbeck. And Einbock means like the billy goat in Germany and specifically Bavaria. So that's why on a lot of Bock beers you'll see a picture of a goat, because of a hilarious mispronunciation back in the day. The Vitus is a wheated bock, so it, again, lager, but with the addition of wheat, darker malts, stronger. So you're gonna get those roasty flavors mixed with those tropical flavors. It's a great combination. It's very exciting on the tongue. It kind of, you go back and forth. You can feel it kind of on all parts of your palate. And this is also of note. This is Christian Lara's favorite beer. So on the ops team here at Redwood City, this is his go-to. There's not a week that goes by that I don't see him drinking one or two of these. After work. All right, I promise I'll stop with this brewery after this. Boom, Corbion. This is even more intense. We just keep going up level after level with the Weihenstephaner. All right, that was a good pronunciation. I need more water. Oh, there you go. Super roasty, super caramel. Starting to get some chocolatey flavors. This beer is named after Saint Corbion, who is actually pictured on the label there. He was the founder of the monastery, the abbey that eventually became the brewery. It's supposed to be a celebration beer. Again, still a lager. It is a Doppelbock, so stronger, maltier, higher ABV, more rich flavors. And it just fantastic. All right, moving on because we are running out of time. Who knew 18 beers could take Neil so long? We're going for the Maximator. Another great Munich beer. This is from Augustiner. This is another Doppelbock, just like the Corbion before it. Rich, dark, toasty. This brewery was established in 1328, and this was actually the official royal supplier of beer for the Bavarian royal house before Hofbrau took over. So they have a lot of provenance, a lot of history as well. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Another interesting thing to note about the Doppelbock in style is it was kind of brewed in order to keep the monks healthy and happy. Specifically during fasting, so they weren't allowed to eat food, they were allowed a certain amount of beer. And so they were trying to brew a beer that had more nutritional content, which is why they tried to do something that was a little fuller, richer, have a little more sweetness to it, more of those dark, roasty, malty flavors, cereal notes, breadiness to it, and also a higher ABV. So imagine being a monk in 1400 and you're not allowed to eat food, but you're drinking beers that are 7.5% ABV, give or take. There's a little bit of a range, but actually I think Doppelbock has to be at least 7.5. Is that true? What is this one? Yeah, 7.5 right there. That's a very, very typical ABV for a Doppelbock. Hooray for drunk monks. Now we are going to switch it up once again. We're getting a little crazy here. This is a domestic beer from Aslan. This is Frauenbier. It's a Schwarzbier. So we're sticking with German style, but I've got 3 domestic Frauenbiers, or Schwarzbiers, sorry. This is, again, kind of thinking in this progression of lagers getting darker, heavier flavors, though with a range of textures. Schwarzbier is the traditional German name for black lager. So still a lager and still fairly light in body, very easy to drink, does not sit heavy in the tummy, but has some of the darkest, most roasty flavors that you can find in any beer. They are almost akin to stouts in a lot of ways, though I think they have the tendency to be more refreshing than stouts, especially if, we shouldn't even consider like stuff like pastry stouts and what have you. I'm talking more traditional like Guinness style stuff. It's more in that vein where you have just like these really dark malt notes, but it's not a heavy beer. It's not like something where you can only drink half a glass of and then you want to take a nap, or you can't eat anything for the rest of the night. It's meant to go with food. It's meant to be sessionable. You can have a couple of them and it's not going to knock you out with ABV, and it's not going to fill you up aggressively or anything. This really good, dark, burnt caramel, burnt sugar, nice roasty bitter notes. It's one of my favorite styles of beer. One of David Cornell's favorite styles of beer. If you're a fan of the San Carlos team. Aslan out of Washington State, out of Bellingham. Really cool folks. This was a beer proposed by their various women on the staff. They wanted to do this style of beer, so that's actually why it's called Frauenbier. They named it after all the ladies in the company. So they were the inspiration. They kind of took a head on it, and it's freaking great, and I'm really happy that they're making it. Also of note with Aslan is they're like all organic, so great little thing for customers there who are curious about that thing. I'm trying to find more organic beers that are cool, or just, you know, I think we have a lot of organic beers, but it's just not explicitly stated as much as like we tried to do with wine. So that's a thing that I'm working on moving forward. But they are really eco-conscious. They plant trees to like replenish all sorts of stuff. They are only doing locally sourced ingredients, and again, all organic. I think they even do some biodynamic stuff when they're, you know, trying to source various malts and that kind of thing. Cool brewery. General Schwartz, another Schwartz beer, black lager. This is Central Coast Brewing. Not much to say about them. They have no information on their website. Really cool place to visit. They're in the SLO area, so they're San Luis Obispo. Downtown, slow, but good coastal beer. This has more floral top notes. It's actually a little lifted compared to the Frauenbier, but still has like these really earthy, dark, deep tones to it. Typically, what we tend to carry up here from Central Coast Brewing is much more of their sour lineup. They're a little more kind of famous for that, or that seems to be what our customers are a little more into at the moment. But they do a whole bunch of styles. I think they're really cool. And again, fun place to visit. I mean, I love San Luis Obispo. So if you're ever down there, check them out. Really fun little spot, really great beers. I think they were founded in 2012. No, they're 1998. But yeah, crazy about their sours. Buy some of their sours from us, but go visit them. Original Pattern, Spaceballs, the beer. Another black lager style, Original Pattern, hanging out in Jack London Square in Oakland. So these are super local for us. Love Original Pattern. They're definitely, they do style, again, like Central Coast, to kind of, they will and have done every style of beer, but they're much more known for their IPAs. They actually have some pretty interesting connections to folks in New Zealand, so they get rare New Zealand hops more than like any other craft brewery in America, as far as I'm aware of. So that's pretty trippy and cool, but they do great IPAs, and you know, pretty much everything that they do is really great. This might be my favorite of the three. I like them all, but this is probably the one I've bought most of. This has more of those smoky, roasty, toasty flavors. Oh, that's so good. And like it hangs out on your tongue, but it's not aggressive. Like the finish is long, and it kind of like leaves you with those interesting burnt sugar bready notes, but it's not a palate wrecker either. Like you could move on from this, or certainly, again, food pairing. That's what one of the things I'm always thinking of is, yeah, like I can drink this and then go back to my meal and keep going back and forth, and they're going to elevate each other. They're not, the beer, despite having the level of bitterness and darkness that it does is not going to dominate what you're eating. Oh, man, that's fun beer. And finally, this is Schlenkerla Kerala. This is a Roche beer, aka a smoke beer. Another one of my favorite styles of beer. Basically, no one does it anymore. There's only 2 breweries where this brewery is, which is supposedly the place where smoked beer originated, in Bamberg, Germany. This brewery dates back to at least 1405 when it was mentioned in historical documents, but was probably brewing a lot longer before that if, all of a sudden you get mentioned in some historical document. You didn't start things that year. Oh, sweet mama. Oh yes. Savory, meaty, smoky. It's actually, they go through a similar process as like a peated Scotch whiskey. So they're doing all their maltings themselves. So they get the barley grain fresh when it's green. They allow it to germinate, so they get it wet and induce that process. And then when the malt gets to a certain level of germination that they like, they are halting that germination process with smoke. So they actually use beechwood. Beechwood is the most traditional wood used for doing a Roche beer, though other woods can be used. Much softer than a peat smoke whiskey. It's not gonna. It doesn't taste like a dead mermaid on a tire fire, like some of those scotches do. But the smoke is incredibly present. It's soft, it's round, but it kind of fills out space in a very interesting way on the palate. And in my mind, this is adhering to the Reinheitsgebot. Smoke is not considered an additional ingredient. It's not a perversion or anything. They were traditionally known as the House of the Blue Lion, which sounds cool in Games of Thrones. But yeah, it's like the meatiness to this beer is just so much fun for me. It is basically a meal in itself. A lot in a similar way that people say that about Guinness, right? It's like drinking bread or something like that, or you can just have a Guinness for sustenance kind of thing is, a joke, a stereotype, whatever. This has so much more flavor and aromatic complexity than that, and I think it has just all these different points of savoriness, sweetness, bitterness, that it is such a complete beverage. It is fantastic. It makes me happy. Not necessarily an Oktoberfest beer, but I will be drinking this for Oktoberfest and probably for the rest of winter in Half Moon Bay when it gets wicked, wicked foggy and cold and drizzly. This is the type of thing that I want to sit on my couch and use it to give me a little bit of a hug and steel me against the cold, dreary nights that I also love. All right, well, thank you very much. Sorry, I think this went a little long, or it's right on time. But anyway, I hope you enjoy the beers. I will see you on the other side. I'm gonna go to Colorado next week, or this week, 2 days from now, a day from now, somewhere. I don't know. And I'll see you in San Francisco. I'll see you in Redwood City. I am excited to have time with my family, and I will be excited to come back and keep finding new cool beers. So, peace out, everybody.